A quiet morning, a train station. Then, an explosion that tore through lives, concrete, and illusions. They blamed the left, but the deeper we dig, the more we find the fingerprints of NATO. This isn't just history, it's the architecture of manipulation, and it never really stopped. After World War II, NATO and the CIA built secret armies across Europe. They were called stay-behind networks, sold to the public as a last line of defense against a Soviet invasion. But the real mission? Destabilize their own nations, from within. It wasn't defense. It was preemptive psychological warfare. They needed a frightened public, one that would beg for state control. So they created terror and blamed the left. But to carry out such a sinister plan, they needed operatives who didn't blink at bloodshed. These hidden forces spanned Italy, France, Belgium, Germany, and Turkey. Trained by Western intelligence, funded in the shadows, always off the books. Each cell waiting for a green light. And guess who they hired? They didn't seek patriots. They sought killers, fascists, ex-Nazis, men already trained in suppression. They lost the war, then they got rehired to shape the peace. And behind it all was a secret lodge that didn't answer to any flag. P2 wasn't just a Masonic lodge. It was a who's who of the Italian deep state. Bankers, generals, judges, and Gladio's command center. They weren't defending democracy. They were rewriting the rules from above. And when the bomb went off in Bologna, many of those fingerprints pointed straight to them. The attack was blamed on communists, but years later, Italian courts exposed the truth. Neo-fascists, Gladio operatives, state intelligence, all colluding to deceive the public. And this wasn't an isolated lie. There were others, some too politically inconvenient to be solved. Aldo Moro tried to unite Italy's left and right, a threat to NATO's agenda. He was kidnapped, murdered. The Red Brigades were blamed, but many believe he was sacrificed. You must abandon your policy of historic compromise, or you will pay. It was a message. Cross this invisible line, and you disappear. Meanwhile, in Turkey, the invisible war spilled violently into the streets. In Turkey, Gladio took on another name, the Deep State. On May Day, 1977, snipers opened fire on protesters in Taksim Square. 36 dead, no arrests. We did it, and we'll do it again. Meanwhile, in Belgium, horror wore a different mask. Masked gunmen stormed supermarkets. Families gunned down in the aisles. No clear motive, no stolen cash, just death and fear. Years later, whispers linked the killers to Gladio-linked police units. But the truth never reached the headlines. And under those whispers, something even darker stirred. The Dutroux scandal exposed a child trafficking ring with protection from the elite. Some of those accused linked to the same networks tied to Gladio. Judges reassigned, investigators removed. The deeper they looked, the more the doors slammed shut. And yet, America, the architect behind much of this, said nothing. In Europe, Gladio was a scandal. In America, a footnote. If that, no headlines, no hearings, no questions. Because silence is part of the playbook. Let's pull back, zoom out, look at the rhythm. 1962, Operation Northwoods, those proposed fake attacks. 1964, Gulf of Tonkin, which you know provoked a war. The 1980s, Gladio terror. 2001, 9/11. And then, what's next? Fear. Reaction, control, repeat. But behind every operation, There's always a money trail. The Vatican, spiritual home to millions, but also a financial laundromat. Banco Ambrosiano collapsed in scandal. Roberto Calvi, God's banker, found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge, bricks in his pockets. He was a member of P2. The Vatican Bank was implicated, but never punished. Follow the money, and you follow the conspiracy. But Gladio wasn't just about bombs and banks. It was about breaking the human spirit. Terror was just one weapon. Another was fear-based conditioning, false flags, propaganda, trauma loops, and yes, mind control. M-Culture tested on civilians without consent. Some techniques overlapped with Gladio psychological warfare tactics. Control perception, and you control society. But what if it never really ended? After the Cold War, Gladio didn't die. It evolved. FBI whistleblower Sybil Edmonds described a new version. Gladio B jihadist proxy networks allegedly used to destabilize Central Asia and the Middle East. She was gagged, silenced, forgotten. The operation shifted east. The playbook didn't. And now, we come full circle. They told us it was for peace, but it was for power. The enemy is within the state. Gladio didn't end. It adapted. It put on new clothes. And today, it walks among us in silence. If they lied then, they'll lie again. History doesn't just repeat. It reloads.